All right, now we're back for maybe hour or two. I don't know how long we'll go, but we were just wrapping up. Maestrieth or Chad jumped on and offered a good little tip here of getting rid of the visible thing from the input. But does anyone else have either something they're stuck on, want some help with? Do you want to brag on something you've written lately? Who's up? Anyone want to share? Dale, you have something else?
I'm afraid to say it. I tried typing this exact code in mine, and it hasn't changed its behavior. It's still doing the same thing. Did we change anything up top? I didn't think so.
Jackie got rid of a couple things, right? Jackie?
The call for the set defaults function, that was one part, the definition of that, and
yeah, I took that out.
The global variable, remove that in two places. That was about it.
Wasn't there something in here? One of these we didn't need it, right?
Yeah, it was right here. There was an and here at the line, and whatever percentage is not in HS, something like that, right? Something like that, and just remove that.
And depending on this, actually it does matter on this one. Okay, never mind. Because I was going to say, hey, here we don't necessarily need to store it as a variable. We could just use this. However, it wouldn't allow us to do that in here off of that, right? So we do need it as a variable.
Oh, I didn't listen well enough, Joe. What did you say?
So normally I love functions because, hey, we can just use them and we don't need to store them in a variable. But I realized we can't just move this. We can't move this and just use it here because of the way AutoHotkey works, right? I don't think we could stop storing it as a variable key and then use it because it's not going to accept this function in there, will it?
The issue is that we're using the exact same key that was pressed multiple times. And if we kept having this hotkey as the thing that
shift.
was,
yeah, excellent, good thinking.
So yeah, I'm not sure if there's more here. I had this idea before we looked into it that maybe this part up here could be changed in how it's actually capitalizing stuff that you're doing, but
hold on, Jackie. I was gonna say, Dale, let's just make sure, right? So I'm gonna copy this, and I assume you don't care. I'll put it in the chat so everyone can see it.
Sure.
And then you can actually give that code a try instead of trying, what maybe we did or didn't change.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was thinking it was something down below in the hot string. But
someone was asking here in the chat, I'm not really stuck on something, but in 2 weeks I will be doing a presentation at work on RPA and AHK.
Cool. Wow.
Anybody have a nice demonstration script to show the different capabilities of AHK?
I've got one.
You've got one. That's good, Chad. What do you have?
Studio.
Yeah, but can you really present that as saying that's the capabilities of AutoHotkey code?
Some of the capabilities.
It sure is a nice what to say.
Example. Yeah,
example,
it's a great statement to its capabilities. Absolutely. What I was going to say was, in my Udemy course for Intro to AutoHotkey, I think it's the second or third, and they're actually downloadable too, or I can send it to you. But I have a video saying, hey, here's the stuff I covered, like web scraping, API calls, hot strings, hotkeys, and some other topics at a high level, right? So you might watch that and I didn't go into in-depth of the actual scripts of them, have them working. I just covered them as a topic because there's so much you can do, right? You could just talk for hours.
You could probably talk for hours, and the problem with the capabilities of AHK is that for the most part, you can do most stuff that you can think up in Windows within reason. Of course, AutoHotkey has some stuff it isn't great at when it comes to crunching numbers at large. Please calculate this million something something number a million times over and tell me the average. Okay, other language will be faster at doing something like that, or maybe if you want to do something, grab the graphics of the screen within 1-digit millisecond time frame, or other very, very CPU graphic intensive, all that kinds of stuff. AutoHotkey might not be the best tool for it, but
No,
if it's but if you're just doing stuff with Windows that a normal user would be doing, I don't see you not being able to do most of it with AutoHotkey.
The other thing that I would definitely mention, because it's something that you don't really think about, is the shortness of development time it takes to do these stuff, right? Because that's one of the things I think that AutoHotkey is amazing at, is often in a couple minutes we can create something that solves 80% of what we need to do, right? As opposed to hours. And actually, someone also wrote me the other day on they like AutoHotkey, but they thought it was kind of had some issues of missing blah, blah blah. I'm like, well, help me understand, what do you think it's missing? They're like, well, there's no like real libraries to work with COM, with Office, and what was the other one? Something about web scraping. There's no there's no clear like drop-in in functions for doing web scraping. And I'm like, those aren't problems with AutoHotkey, right? It's just no one has actually created libraries that they're sharing that have this stuff, right? It's not that AutoHotkey can't do it. It's that we don't have necessarily the libraries available. People have made them available, right? It's
one of the things that and that's just me, I've always loved doing like COM and AutoHotkey, because to me it seems as if I'm using it the way that Microsoft intended it, and not the way that Hamash from India thought that it was a good way of making you use it. And it's nice that you can take some shortcuts by using a library that someone used or made. But to me, writing the correct, or whatever you'd call that, things when you want to get an element with a specific ID, instead of typing in get HTML ID element. No, I'll much rather just use what Microsoft thought of and said get element by ID, and use the function that originally was the one that I can find on MSDN, instead of having someone thinking up a better way of doing it or whatever, because it's much easier to look up what's online and the way that it was thought that it should be done. I'm not sure if I'm just rambling, but that's what it's still something that I feel. With COM, the way that Sean and Lexicos and all those made it just use the Dell's functions with the names that are there. It wouldn't make sense to me to have a library. I remember the old COM library and how chunky it looked. Someone writing a library for doing Outlook COM might in some aspects be nice, because it's not as easy to find good examples on Outlook COM, but still, when you then find one, if you need to convert it into the way that the guy in AutoHotkey wrote a library, that it's like Selenium. The way that you're finding elements in Selenium is named kind of weird, contrary to the way you would do it with COM. or with JavaScript, or with VBA, or with
Yeah.
so Selenium has its own way of saying stuff, and it
Right.
just makes you need to learn something.
Yeah, actually, that was one of the things they complained about was the DOM and blah blah blah, and I'm like, that has nothing to do with AutoHotkey, right? It's almost every browser uses the DOM in the similar way, and you have to navigate it. You have to learn how to do it. It's now you can like mine. I have my web scraping syntax writer, so you can this helps write the AutoHotkey syntax, right, for doing stuff. It's an example, right? It's a cheater way to do it, but it's I agree with you, Jackie. There's so many different things you can do with stuff. Having a library actually written for it, because there are some things it's nice having handy, especially that event listener, right? I like having that one written out, but other than that, it's always every web page is different, and so you can't just create a simple thing that works everywhere.
No, but I've seen instead of here you have pwb.navigate and then you type in the URL, and I've seen libraries in Python and others where it would say go to page in browser and then the URL.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, it's nice to have a library where you can write that, and it will open a browser for you, and it will show you the page that you asked for. But you're not using the native functions, and you're not learning what they're called, and you're just learning what someone thought was an easy way of doing it.
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah. But did anyone else have anything that they wanted to either share or chat? I don't remember. I think you've been doing most stuff for me lately. I don't know if you have anything cool that you've written, or Jackie, if you've got any examples of stuff you've worked on lately. At the beginning of the call, I don't think you were on here, Chad, but I mentioned the dialer and CRM tool you're building. I didn't go into ins and outs of it, but I did mention it's really awesome that we're getting this thing built, and it's going to be better than anything else we could have found.
Oh yeah. It's just building custom solutions for problems is just a wonderful thing for AutoHotkey. It allows you to do so much, and it's all building off of this simple crap that anybody can do. It's just keep throwing ideas together and keep throwing more code at it, and it'll eventually do what you want it to do.
And it's one of the books I'm reading right now is it's for entrepreneurship, and it talks about how most new products you see out there, they're not really new, right? They're just a recombination of either technology or things that have existed in the past, just combining them like in a slightly different way that optimizes them or uses them in just a little bit different. And AutoHotkey is one of those things where, boy, once you start learning, right, it's easy to kind of think up new ways to do stuff and solve problems that you never would have thought of before.
It's probably a bit unrelated, but I just saw recently Cruise Croissant video talking about what was it, the tether, I think. It's something that can be used in space travel, and instead of using like a space elevator or something like that, having a big weight suspended in space, so to speak, with a long cable that would then rotate it. And because of the weight and how rotation works, the tether would of course keep going into our atmosphere. And instead of sending a big rocket way out into space using gallons and gallons and gallons of fuel, you would instead only need to go 1/10 of the height to reach the point where the tether would go down into the atmosphere. And by connecting with that, the momentum of it would then propel you out into space instead of using fuel on it. And by that way, lifting you out into space without using fuel. And just using a very simple string and a rock, so to speak, you would have very, very efficient way of taking things out of the Earth orbit. Made a lot of sense. Good video, great video. Watch it if you want to. But the thing was, someone commented, one of the first things that people did was to give rocks speed. They would use a string and just hurl it around and sling it. It's one of the first human weapons, was the handheld sling, a string with a rock, hurling it around, and we're
how David
still
killed
using,
Goliath, right? I mean,
yeah,
that's where
exactly. But yeah, it's just interesting that at the forefront of what we're doing, that simple principle is still usable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think even Einstein, and I don't remember his direct quotes, but he was a big believer in reapplying old things in different ways. And realize, actually, one of my friend's dads, he was in the Navy, and he said they used to work on these big, and when I talk big, I'm talking like aircraft carrier type things, and they'd haul them out of the ocean or whatever. And when they get them out, or maybe it's before they're putting them in, I forget which way, but the propellers, and he was telling me, he's like, yeah, they put these propellers that are like as big as your house, right? And they put them on, and then they stick a cotter pin, which is bigger than a person, goes through it, and they bend the end, and like it's the same design like we have on our car, on everything else. It's just bigger, right? And it was like, you'd think they would have come up with a better way to do this, but that's what they did. Just like, well, we could do it that way.
Yeah, it's often something like very simple like that.
Hey, Jean, have you done any updates to QAP? Have you finished? I haven't been keeping track of the version. I've been super busy lately, but I didn't know if you finished your switching over to contract.
Yes, I released version 10 a few weeks ago.
Oh, awesome!
And still catching up with some bugs in it, but no serious bug, but just small things that are revealed as users are using it with some combination of features that are rarely used, and it reveals a few bugs because the most of the code has been rewritten. So of course there's and optimize and using classes and so using new tools. Yeah, so it's going well.
Did I stop sharing? No, it's just not highlighted.
No, we see it.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so I didn't realize that I actually...
So there's a redesign of the customized window that you show actually, which was named settings window before, but I changed the name for something that's more accurate, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And removing a lot of buttons that were there and putting these commands in a menu bar that you see. It was not there. This menu bar was not there before.
Mm.
So some of these options were available only in the tray menu or using buttons. So making it available that way is easier to find.
Cool.
And less cluttered in the main window.
I think everyone here, we've brought it up a lot, but this is Jean's tool, Quick Access Pop-Up. It's written in AutoHotkey. It's not even, the predominant audience don't even know about AutoHotkey, right? But I love it for the snippets, being able to create GUI windows. Like I can pull it up, go to my syntax. Let's say I'm doing AutoHotkey code, and I have my little snippets, so I don't have to remember. Of course, I had that at the end of there. I can have my little snippets of stuff, and so I have a GUI system, yet I don't have to create with the menus, which is what I used to do manually before, and it just took a long time. So it's a super friendly, easy to use tool.
Here you can assign hot strings or keyboard shortcuts to your snippets or to any type of favorite folder, application, name it.
Yeah. So, and he had a while back started converting it over to using classes instead of I don't know how to describe how you had it before, but it's much
Yeah,
more
it was
efficient.
function. In fact, the application grow. I don't know the past tense of growing, but it
Yeah.
grow for the last 3 or 4 years. And of course, when you add things here and there, at some time, it become not sure with the English word for that, clumsy, or
Okay. Yeah.
not sure if the
Not
right word.
optimal. Yeah.
Not optimal, or some repetition, some. It became harder to maintain. So now using classes and using more and more the debugging tool of Site that I love very much. It's really helpful to debug with that. So now I'm just starting to add new features. The last 6 months were just redoing, but now I'm starting again to add new features.
And of course, I have a hot string for that's where you can find that. And then actually, I don't think I have Chad's. Yeah, no, I don't have his website, but there's on my site I have a ton of. If you haven't tried AutoHotkey Studio, Chad, what was the quote you read to me earlier today that someone had said about Studio? I don't know if you're I think you're still there. It said something about it was a kick-ass, kick-butt program.
I don't recall. It's not for everybody. It doesn't always do exactly what everybody wants, but for me, it's helpful.
Yeah, I got 38 tutorials plus a couple. This one, this is almost 2 hours long, Chad. We did a walkthrough that really went through like almost everything at the time of it.
Right.
But
it's
yeah,
not for everybody, and it doesn't always do what everybody wants. Or what did you say, Chad?
It's just everybody's got to complain about everything, of course. Absolutely. It's the internet. That's what they do. It's just, they're like, well, it doesn't do this, this, and this, and this. I was like, well, no, but if you want, or if you give it enough time and you give it enough effort, you can program it to do what you want it to do.
Yeah.
It's basically open framework for just about anything. If you want it to do something, it can probably do it if you want it to. It's just God, I've worked since 2005, so 14 years on it. I'm kind of burned out. It's like, yeah, if you want it to do this or something else, make it do it. You're more than welcome. I mean, with AutoHotkey as the backbone of it,
right,
you can do whatever you want.
Well, case in point, so Chad, you have your little plugin for the database thing, right? And I know it's just connecting to it, but when he's working on a SQLite database, if you're in the folder, is that what it is, Chad? That you can click the thing and it'll pop open your database with your viewer and everything.
Right.
But that's a plugin you wrote? Is that right?
Yeah, it's a plugin that I wrote. I didn't publish it because it's still clunky as all in hell, but it works well enough.
Yeah.
All it really does is exposes the directory of where the project is located, so that you can with the update, it'll now show a list of all of the SQLite databases within the folder, and then allow you to choose which one you want to open.
One of the and I don't know if you ever finished it, Chad, but at one point a couple weeks you were working on it, but you were creating a new class, I thought you said, for creating your GUIs. Did you ever?
No, good God, I've been so busy. I haven't been able to get back to that.
That what I just demonstrated there was, I think, one of the coolest little things. You can split windows and do what you want, put them where you want them, so easily. The math and the stuff behind that, to me, is just mind-boggling. But yeah, it's I wouldn't open a 100,000 row file with Studio probably, but
oh heavens no.
But it overall, it's much more stable than a couple years ago, I think, to me.
Well, yeah, it's more meant for modularity. AutoHotkey allows for includes, which Studio excels with, because you can just keep adding include after include to any project, and it's just, it'll keep track of everything and make it searchable and easy to find whatever it is you're looking for, and offer up like custom parameters for functions and stuff like that if you decide to make your own. I mean, as long as you keep the syntax relatively normal, it catches most everything. It's just a lot of people don't like the fact that, well, it's not how I write code, so screw you. So I was like, all right, whatever. I mean, there's only so much you can do with regx to cut through the crap that people do.
Oh,
AutoHotkey is, to a fault, just loose as can be.
yeah.
And that makes my job of creating an IDE so difficult. It's like, well, you know, you can define a variable this way or this way or this way. It's just like, oh, for crying out loud, give me a break. I mean, you can, like, indentation, stuff like that. It's just like so many things that can affect indentation, and it's just like, I did what I could.
Yep.
I mean, you know, your corner case, oh yeah, I could put that in there, and then bloat the software even more, make it slower and make it less responsive. And I mean, I've spent months just making it as responsive as it is now. Imagine adding more on top of it, because to Jackie's point earlier, AutoHotkey's not for everything. And unfortunately, creating an IDE is demanding on the the language that you're using to run it. And since that's AutoHotkey, things get crossed. It says that it's single threaded, but some of the instances I've found of timing and everything have just been a mess. And just programming to try to fight that is, it's a losing battle. It really is. I mean, you can get most things right, but good Lord.
Yeah, and AutoHotkey was a fork of AutoIt, right? And was thought to be an easy way to make hot strings and hotkeys and have some easily accessible productivity tools, perhaps. And it's been extended, and I don't think they originally had a plan in mind for where it ended up.
Absolutely not.
And of course, each time someone has tried to build upon the original work, and that's what Lexicos has said, and others as well, they're having a hard time because that wasn't the original idea. And that's probably also why some people are trying to do a version 2 to try and get around some of those now
As
old.
much as I love the language, it really does need some serious structure.
Yeah. And again, if the project gets big enough, it most of the time it just makes sense if it's a little bit stricter typed than AutoHotkey, perhaps. But yeah, it's so great for.
By the way, Brad, I saw him earlier. He must have had another meeting or something to be dropped off. He had written me, and he's like, hey, I have text kind of like this, which is why I just wrote out because I know the stuff he had was sensitive, so I didn't want to share it. But he was saying he wanted to get he wanted a regular expression to get the third thing after the third pipe. And even though what I didn't mention to him, which hopefully he watches this video, but I'm like, well, that's not going to take care of anything in here. But once you're on these rows, I thought a stir split, of this. Of course, we don't need each of these, but it does demonstrate how. So there's the first, second, and then but here now you can see, right? So these are tab delimited, or it's parsing them out here to show it. But instead of using a regular expression, I thought using stersplit would be a more efficient way, easy way to get what you wanted.
9 times out of 10, I use stersplit.
Yeah.
If I can help it, I use it just because it's so much easier than taking the time to write out a complicated regx. I mean, don't get me wrong, regx is a lot more flexible and you can do a lot more things with it. But if it's a simple pattern, then stersplit is usually more than capable of dealing with anything like that. It's just so much faster, so much less code. The object model that they used is stunningly fast.
Yeah, and I'd say with coming back to your code later, something like stersplit is just way simpler to dissect.
Yeah, great point, Jackie.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Because a complicated regx, man, if you didn't use the line breaking and when it's really complicated, it's really, man, it's so hard to get back into it after you've walked away for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it's like a whole different language, literally. It's just like, oh, I look at it and my eyes go cross. It's just like, all right, whatever. But some of the crazy ass crap that I had to write for Studio just to, let's see. Let's see if I can still find some of those old, wonderful regexes that I had to write.
And if you haven't played with regular expressions, if you come to my site and go under AutoHotkey to regular expressions, I have several examples, and then we have we did a webinar focused on regx. That's another we could probably do again if we wanted to. It's a fascinating topic, but they're very fun to play with.
Oh, they're wonderful. If you got the time and the mental fortitude to deal with it.
Yeah.
Just trying to remember how the hell I structured this.
Dimitri just asked, he's wondering when version 2 will officially be released.
It's only been in development for what, 7 years?
Something like that, yeah.
Give it another 20, it'll be ready.
It's one of those things, because him and other people backport some of the stuff that are the value they were adding to it. I'm not confident it's ever going to be the main go-to.
Well, the problem is that it breaks so much of the legacy functionality.
Right, exactly, and that's why I'm saying that is.
Yeah, the issue with one of the issues might be exactly that we don't have that many libraries, we don't have that many top developers, we don't have that many. So what we do have is history, and someone coming in, staying without a hotkey for a year, writing some great code, some great libraries, or some great functions or whatever, but they're no longer with us. And if AutoHotkey then switches to version 2, all of that old great code would be almost unusable. And who is then to rewrite it? We don't have the community for doing that, really. That's
not
at least
so much, no.
Yeah.
So Chad, you just shared this. This was what, a regx you had in Studio? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's one of the regexes. I believe that's for a function. So that's the regx that I have to use to determine whether or not somebody created a function within Studio.
What I don't remember, what's the little m here? What's that do?
LittleM, just it converts everything to a single carriage return. It's probably not necessary since, well, no, it is actually very necessary, because 99%, well, not 99%, but most of the AutoHotkey code is the carriage return is a TAC R TAC N, and so when it reads it in, it's got to take all of it basically unifies all of the carriage returns to TAC N, rather than having multiple, because some things could be just TAC R, some things could be just TAC N. So this.
Just to be clear, though, that's what the little lowercase m does?
Oh, M or N?
M. Mary.
Oh, M is multi-line, sorry.
Okay.
So that means that the match doesn't end at a carriage return. So you can have a match that spans multiple lines.
Thank you.
Because
O is the object, right? The U is ungreedy.
Right.
And then now I know what N is, since you've been, or the tick mark in.
Yeah.
Begin. Carrots begin.
Yeah, caret's the beginning of the string, and then /s is whether or not it's a white space. It can have a white space or not, so the line can start justified to the border of the left, or it could have some white space. As long as it's a tab or a space, then it's fine. Then you get into any possible letter that could be between 0 and X7F within the, that's the characters that AutoHotkey can recognize. It covers a broad spectrum of most UTF and the accented O's and U's and umlauts and stuff like that.
Interesting.
And then it looks for an open parentheses, and then it looks for just data between the open and closed parentheses, and I also have to strip out everything within double quotes, because within a double quote you can have a parentheses that doesn't affect the actual definition of a function.
Where are you doing that?
I think I do that somewhere else within Studio on the back end.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you.
That's not done here, because that would be just an absolute nightmare. Because what Studio does is it pre-processes all the text, and it pulls out basically everything that is a comment or everything like that. And then within each line, it'll rip out everything within double quotes, and it just kind of smashes that together in order to make the commas work. Like if you're going through a function and you put in a comma, you'll notice that it'll go to the next parameter within that function. And even with the double quotes within a function, it doesn't normally break it. Sometimes it will, depending on the syntax of what you write. Like I said, it's nearly impossible to code this crap and get it efficient. Because it's like, well, you could what's the word I'm looking for? What about this use case? What about this corner case? What about this corner case? It could be several megabytes worth of corner cases that I could have to deal with, but I mean,
slow everything down.
And it's just gonna tank the script.
Yeah, that's when you see one for a regular expression for an email address, right? For a true any possibility, it's crazy long. Yet,
it's
much shorter one, handles it 99.9% of the cases.
Right, but I mean, you've got to deal with every edge case.
Yeah. This I know this / uppercase means it's like the opposite, right? But what is R?
No, that actually means any carriage return.
Oh, okay. No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, /uppercase R means any carriage return. So tac R, tac N, tac R, tac N, doesn't matter. It's all dealt with. So that's just one of the regx's that I and other people had contributed to it.
And the both of those are where it's the brackets 0, that's saying this is how many of them?
Yeah, 0 or more, right? Okay.
But why couldn't you use like the plus or the dot?
I don't remember, but it broke.
Okay.
So I had to use that. I forget why, to be honest. I think it has a lot to do with the fact that what I'm searching for is within the parentheses, and putting a question mark after the parentheses would cause it to break. So even if there was the match there, it would just go right on by it sometimes, or it's a pain. So regx is a delicate balance of garbage on top of garbage that works sometimes.
And especially a very important point is to realize does it work in the data you have at this point? And if that's good enough, fine. But if you're going to get more data, especially from different types of sources, right, then it's hard to test because you don't know how it's going to come in. Right?
Yeah, it's just basically when you write an ID, you're trying to anticipate everything. It's just like, I mean, people are dumb. I hate to say it, but people do things, well, not dumb, but they just do things differently. And it's just like, man, there should be a consistent way of doing everything so that it's an agreed upon thing. Comments should be, granted, comments are important for some people and they're wonderful for certain things, but man, I mean, like, somebody will create a function, start it on one line, put 17 lines of comments in it, and then open up the brace. It's just like,
yeah,
what are you trying to do?
Yeah.
Pardon me.
Awesome. Did I don't know how much people have spent with regular expressions, but they are an experience to say the least. Did anyone have anything else they wanted to review, discuss, play with, talk about?
Not currently. Of course, it's also late for me, but yeah, if someone has something, welcome to share.
Yeah, and maybe this is just a good reminder. So if you're working, here's the thing: if you see something on the forum or somewhere that you'd like to learn, right? Write us, especially like a week before the webinar, and say, hey, can we talk about this? And can someone walk us through this thing, right? It's just a great way. I think this kind of a forum is a great way to pick a given topic, walk through it line by line, and talk to why it was written a certain way and things that you can do to optimize it or change it.
Yeah, and it becomes a learning resource, however way you put it. And today we were looking at someone making something that could seem simple. He was using hot strings and he was using hotkeys, and he was doing it a little bit advanced, but something in it made it not work as he wanted it to. And by just working through it, having multiple eyes on it, we actually ended up fixing it. At least that was what it seemed like.
So make sure that the actual code does work in the way that he wanted it to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Dale, were you able to give it a try? Did you get it working?
It's still behaving like it did before.
Why don't I stop sharing if you're up for it, and you can share your screen?
Sure.
Okay.
Let's see.
This is the other thing, of course, is it's hard to narrow down. Is it something different on a given computer, right?
Sure. I guess.
Yeah, I always will say, let me see what it's doing on your computer.
Right.
All right. So are we seeing?
Yeah, we see the WordPad document.
All right. Good. And so I cut and pasted this out of the chat room, and I was looking over this over and over, like, did I have a typo or something there?
And you did close the version 2, which I think is what it was.
Yeah, all I have is this one here running.
Okay, just making sure. Sorry, it was.
Yep.
That's my area of expertise.
Because what?
So a lot of times you'll have like an AutoHotkey script in the little down chevron there that'll be running in the background that you don't realize. But yeah, that looks like it's good.
QAP.
It's because of QAP. No, I'm just teasing.
I thought maybe.
What happens when you type in the string? Go ahead.
So if I type period in the letter T real quick.
Well, you got to redo the whole string.
Yeah, he broke the flow.
It works. But if I do C9 and like talk about it, I wait a few seconds and then hit a key, I get the greater than, which is the shift of the period, which is the last key I typed before. Because if I do it comma C99, I have two ways of firing it. It'll show up, and I type the 9 and the T real quick, I get it. But if I do C, comma C, 99, see, it put that other parenthesis in there, which is the shift 9. So it's...
That doesn't make any sense.
No. So it's... like it's not waiting for the key, it's still giving the shifted value. And then that's why I was looking, what's running on my computer that's doing a side effect.
Oh, you've got a hotkey for... Okay, so you've got global hotkeys set for all of these keys. That could be causing a lot of issue here. What is the top part of this? Why are you checking for all of those hotkeys or all of those keys at the top? I missed that part.
So I call it press and hold. So if you like if I well, let me get rid of this. No, leave it there.
It doesn't matter. Yeah.
So if I type ABC, I get ABC. But if I press and hold the letter A, I get a capital A. Press and hold the letter B, I get a capital B.
Okay.
Press and hold 3, I get a pound kind of thing. So
just basically the shifted version of the key.
Yes. So I could do it one fingered.
Right.
So that's the one finger salute there, Dale.
So I'm just wondering if that's causing...
Well, that's believe it is. Well, our fix was to remove the visible option here, pull it into the variable key, and then send out the shifted version. But it's like still being affected by the timer.
Right. Just let's see, key event, yada yada.
And when we troubleshooted it, it seemed to have been fixed. And then I'm like, well, let me try that. I'm like, not here.
Okay. Well, I mean, I'd be willing to work on this for a little bit if you want to send me that code that you have there. And just paste it.
Actually, it's in the chat.
Yeah, Joe pasted it in the chat room if you can scroll.
Oh, Lord.
Well, I could send it to you.
I can throw it in Hangouts.
I think I found all of the text.
But the thing that's input is not the shifted version, so it doesn't seem as if it's the actual key event that's doing anything. To me, it seems what's actually being sent there, right?
Oh wow, how did I miss all of that?
So is it the shifted version of the last hot string thing you typed? Is that what's being inputted?
Well, if I don't type quickly, you get the shifted value of the last keystroke.
Yeah, what I'm guessing, and I'm just guessing, is that because you're using the variable key, could that be something? Or is that because at one point you had global in a couple of places, and I'm just unsure if the variable key was in the global space or what?
It's commented out. Oh, here. Yeah, right there it's used.
It's probably simpler to change it down in the hotkey. Just try it.
Dimitri mentioned disabling the key event when waiting for the input will probably fix the problem.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. Is there a way that you can paste that to the paste bin or something? Because I tried copying it from the chat and it's just
loses the format. Yeah.
Yeah, most likely we'll just have to disable the hotkeys and.
Wouldn't the simplest way of doing that be with a directive?
Hold on a minute. I gotta.
Supper, there's no hurry. Thank you.
So yeah, it wasn't actually the value of the variable. It would have been strange because the key within key event should be in a local scope, so it shouldn't have interfered. But I was just unsure if all the setting of global stuff earlier was interfering.
I put
Gail, how do you normally talk to people online? Do you usually Skype or Hangouts or?
I could do Skype.
All right.
I pasted it in the chat, Chad.
Oh, you did?
Script.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've got to go. I put my email address in there. Skype is fine. If you want to send me a friend request, I'm more than happy to take a look at this and see what I can do. But I have to run and get my father some food.
Sure. Understood. It's one of those things that doesn't seem real deep and complicated, but it's like, there's just something going on here.
Cool. Thanks, Chad. Is there anything else anyone wants to work on or play with or have a question about? Are we good?
I had a little funny thing. Funny looking back at how hot strings could cause side effects. I was changing a password and it turned out my new password had a hot string in it. So, you type it and confirm it and okay, now let me put it in my phone. It's like not working. Oh.
Yeah. I think most people know I have hundreds of hot strings, and occasionally they trigger them, falsely, and they shouldn't. And thankfully, most of them don't have a return. Usually, it's an instant message, and it doesn't instantly send it because it'd be very confusing if it did. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, this was fun, I think, and I think overall, hopefully, more people will start bringing in stuff they want to work on because I think this is a great way to learn, to focus in the area. Right. I learned some stuff today. It was awesome. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It's great.
Yes.
All righty then. Well, we'll catch you guys next month. Thanks for being here.
Yeah. Bye.
Thank you.